first, let me introduce myself. My name is Diogo Rede. I'm TestRail Solution Architect and Testing Advocate, which is quite a big name for a position, but basically I try to help people have a better experience using TestRail, giving examples of how to use TestRail and how to also do things like integrate with automation tools, etc. So what is the TestRail CLI for some of you who might not have had any contact with it? The TestRail CLI is a command line interface, hence why CLI, and it enables you to send your results, your test automation results to TestRail, either from your local machine or your CI/CD pipeline. Usually the CI/CD pipeline is the most common scenario. And so if you have a JUnit report, you can simply use the TestRail CLI to parse that report and send in the results, and you don't have to worry about much more than that in one line of code or two lines of code. And when I say code, it's basically scripting, shell scripting. You can have your results in TestRail. And it's also, like I mentioned, an open source project, which is maintained in GitHub. About our open source community, the TestRail CLI is in GitHub. It's in the Gurok, it's under Gurok, the TR-CLI. It has a couple of stars, it has a couple of forks as well, so some people are also making some customizations, I assume, to use for their own projects, and you're more than welcome to do so. So you can do it for yourself, or you can also share it with the community, open a pull request and try to get some new stuff into the CLI. I'll get to it as soon as I can. And we wanted to give a shout out to our contributors. So these are people who actually got their hands dirty and made some code and created a pull request. So this is great. Please, if you have the skills, if you have the will, please feel free to contribute as well. Then also, this is like, well, whoever is using the CLI probably knows this as well. This is available through the Python package index. And to install it, you just need to use the pip install TR-CLI. I didn't mention this for whoever doesn't know. The tool is written in Python, hence why it's in the Python package index. So let's go to what you really want to hear. So new features, what do we have to show you on this webinar, and what do you have to leverage in this new release? One of the most important things here is test mapping with TestRail case ID. What this means is that instead of the test being mapped using that automatic mechanism, which was the automation ID, which uses properties from the JUnit report and automatically creates test cases and adds that ID. What we can now do is add the case ID. So you create your test cases in TestRail first. Maybe you already have a project that's filled with test cases, and you just want to map them to your test automation suite. So you just grab the case ID from TestRail and you add it in your code, and then the results are mapped to that test case that already exists in TestRail. Then you can also relate your test runs to milestones. A few people were also asking for this feature. So if you want to relate your test runs to milestones so that it makes it easier to organize your test runs, to report on your test results, you can now do this as well. You can have your elapsed time in milliseconds. This was something we had some complaints about as well. Because some people wanted to see milliseconds for things like API tests, which are very fast. So we were only supporting above 1 second, because these milliseconds are only supported from version 5.5, if it's not failing me, 5.5 of TestRail. So if you have a version above that one, you can now have time in milliseconds. I'll show you how in a few moments. You can also enrich your new test cases with the data in case fields, custom fields, etc. You can enrich your test results with result fields, with comments, and also attachments for whoever doesn't know that. There's also support for multi-select field values. This wasn't supported before, so if you have one of those fields, you can now send one or more values to inject in those fields. We have a really neat integration with the SauceLabs saucectl. For any of you who are using the saucectl, you can now have your links to SauceLabs in your TestRail results. I'll show you how it looks like in a few moments as well. And then there were quite a few other small improvements. All this amounted to 20 GitHub issues we closed, so quite a lot of work there, and I hope people who open this are happy with the resolution. About automation workflows. So what's this we are talking about? What are these automation workflows? So up until now, the CLI behavior would create the test cases in TestRail and add the results. This is what we call a code-first approach, because you first write your test cases in your code. So for instance, this is for Cypress. If you are using Cypress, you would write something like this. This is a test case. And then when you execute the test case, you will generate a report that looks somewhat like this. So it has a class name and a name. And then when you import the results using the CLI, what you have is an auto-generated automation ID, and the tests are also automatically created. Although you could have your tests in TestRail and add this automation ID manually, that would be quite cumbersome and probably a lot of effort to actually figure out what these IDs are, etc. So we now also support a specification-first approach, where you have your test cases in TestRail and you have their IDs. And when you write your test cases in your test automation suite, you can just add the case ID in the name or in a property, and it automatically maps those results to the right test cases that already exist in TestRail. So it won't create these new test cases. And so how it does this is it reads the ID from the name in the test case from the JUnit report. Going into a little bit more detail about code first. So first, like I was mentioning, you code your automated tests, then you run those automated tests. It generates a JUnit report, and this is the touch point between the automation frameworks and the CLI, because CLI doesn't connect to the frameworks themselves directly. It parses the JUnit report, which is an XML file that you should be able to see in your projects after you execute them. A lot of frameworks support this. This is why we also provide support through the CLI for JUnit reports. And this, what it does, it automatically creates your test cases and it maps them using the automation ID. So you have your results in TestRail. So the pros here are that you have automatic test case creation, you have automatic test case mapping, you can manage your test cases in your code base only. So this is more suited for teams who are more technical, who approach test design directly in code maybe. On the other hand, you have also some cons. So mapping is a little bit more brittle. It may break if your automation project structure changes, if your test names change as well. It may break this mapping. Teams with low experience may end up duplicating test cases because of this I just mentioned. And it's hard and laborious to create mappings if test cases already exist in TestRail. And then we have our all new specification-first workflow. And I'm not saying this is a new and better workflow. It's just a different one that may suit some of you. In this workflow, you start in TestRail. You start by creating your test cases and you can prioritize them for automation. You can add any level of detail you want to maybe then enable your test automation team to implement them. And then there is the coding part. And in the coding part, you need to add those case IDs to your test cases to map them. Then you run your automated tests. And again, it generates a JUnit report, which in turn is parsed by the TestRail CLI. And it will then send the report, the results to the respective test cases. The pros here are that the test case mappings are kept when structural code changes occur, which wouldn't happen if you change the structure with using the other approach. It reduces the chances of duplicating test cases through automatic creation. It enables thorough test case design and planning, because if you design and plan your test cases in TestRail first, you probably will pay more attention to those. It mostly suits teams who require good test documentation. For teams for who having the test documented in code alone is not enough. But it also has some cons as well. So test cases without case ID in the code will not be created, so the results won't be submitted. So there's that sort of manual step you have. It's an extra manual step you have to take. And that can be, well, error prone. It can be laborious as well. So yeah, both approaches have their pros and their cons. And so from here, we are going straight to our demo where I'm going to show you, first I'm going to show you exactly this, the code first and the specification first approach using Cypress. Then I'll go to demonstrate the other features using a Playwright project, just so we can also see a couple of different frameworks in action. And then also see how the saucectl behaves along with the TestRail CLI. And okay, what we have here is a Cypress sample project. This project is available in our sample projects repository, which is in GitHub. We have instructions for code first, and we also have instructions for specification first. What I'm going to do is demonstrate how you do this in practice. And we are going straight to the code first execution. Code first. For code first, what you need to do is first you install the TestRail CLI. So I would run this command. I already have the projects installed, just so we don't lose time with this because it downloads a lot of stuff. So I already have the CLI installed. For that, the first step is just running pip install trcli. Just need Python in your machine. And then for the Cypress project, you do npm install. You must have Node in your machine as well. But okay, those are other details. And then you run the tests using this line here. So there's a little trick to it here. So when you're running Cypress, you do the Cypress run command, and then you need to say that you want the JUnit reporter. This is the type of report that the CLI consumes. And to enable Cypress to actually output this, you need to have this reporter option here, and then add some options to the reporter as well. Right here, I'm saying that the Mocha file, which is the report itself, is going to be on this path. So reports, code first, and then a hash. This is just so I have a pattern because this generates multiple reports and we just want one report. So we are going to then merge those reports. And to merge those reports, we must have sort of a pattern. So this step number 4, we'll do exactly that. We'll merge the reports. This JUnit parser is included in the TestRail CLI, so you don't have to install anything else to execute this. And finally, we are going to upload our results. So this one is using the tests in this path. So Cypress end-to-end code first. So let's see them over here. So Cypress end-to-end code first. There are 2 files here, and these are just simple tests. They actually use the sample app from Cypress. So you have a couple of tests here. So you have a describe block, and then you have a couple of IT blocks, which are the test case, the individual test cases, the context block, another IT block. So quite a few test cases here, nothing different from what you would regularly do. And we can just run this. So I'm going to run the code first approach here. And what it will do is run the Cypress project. And here we go. It's running the first test suite here. So the to-do interactions. Okay, all good. Now running the second one. And okay, everything okay. And now all ready. Okay, and now the CLI is doing what we were expecting it to do, and it submitted the test results, and it also outputs the run that was created. So right now I'm going to my project here. I had already created this TestRail CLI code first project. And if I refresh my test cases, I can see that I have all the test cases from the project here. So these test cases are basically what's in this report here. So we have one test case here in this test suite. So basically it's these test cases you can see here. And these have automation IDs. So if I add this column here, so the automation ID column, we just put it a little bigger. So 15, okay, this works. We can see that it added the automation ID, and this is how the tests are mapped. And then we can also see that we have our code first run here, And okay, we have our results here, everything worked. And if we run this again, it will work again. It will update, it will create a new run, and it will not create new test cases because it has this mapping. Now on the new approach, what we are going to do is see our project in TestRail. So I have this TestRail CLI specification-first project. And if I come to my test cases, I can see that, okay, I already wrote my test cases here. I didn't map it to anything in the automation code yet, but I don't want to recreate, I don't want this test to be duplicated. I don't want to add the automation ID because I need to go copy paste stuff from the report. So what I want to do is basically say, hey, okay, this test case here in my automation suite is going to be mapped to this test case here. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to add it to the test case title here. So I usually like to copy it like this, put it in square brackets, but you could also just use it like this. It could be in the beginning. It could also be in the end of the name. There's a couple of ways to do this. So it's flexible enough for everyone, I hope. And this is all you have to do to map your test cases from your automation suite to TestRail. And then we have a couple more. I had already added this. Oh, wait, I'm in the wrong project. Sorry about this. Should be on the spec-first project. Okay, so I'm going to add the test case ID here. Okay, and then over here I had already added all the IDs. So the IDs are always in these IT blocks. This is for Cypress, of course. On any other framework, it will be on the name, wherever the name of the test is. So let's run this. And this is the specification first. Let me close this few windows here. And okay, over here, the only difference is that we have a case matcher, and the case matcher is name, because you can also have the ID in a property. Right here, we are using the name to match the cases. So you need to use this property to match to the right cases. Other than that, these other steps are exactly the same. You don't need to make any modifications. You just need to add the IDs to your code. And when we do this, when we run this, so let's run specification first now and see what happens. And the tests are running right now. Went down, another suit to go. And there it is. One test failed. Okay, everything good. It's creating our test run, adding the results, and we should be good. So coming back here, we still have all our tests here. If I refresh, there are no new test cases that were created. And speaking of new test cases, you could actually create new test cases for test cases if you don't add an ID. But I have a strong recommendation, which is using the no response, this -n here. What this means is that it won't create new test cases, because using this approach, you typically won't want to create new test cases, because you would then have to go to TestRail and copy the IDs to your test project. If you don't do that, it will always create new test cases over and over and duplicate everything. So I recommend you write your test cases in TestRail first, and only only then get them to your automation suite, and always use this -n option here. So okay, we have our test cases here, and if we go to the test run, we can see that we have a specification first test run, and the results were mapped to the right test cases here. In comparison, what we can see for a big difference we see from here, from one to the other, is that, for instance, while when you automatically create test cases, it will follow it will have the same structure as the report. So it will have like these interactions to do app list, and it will have this describe block, and then it will have the test names here, etc. If you use a specification first, you can just write tests and organize them as you wish, and then just map them, and it just looks prettier, you know. It's easier to organize things. So this is basically what I had to show about code first versus specification first. I hope a lot of you will benefit from using this new workflow. I know we had quite a few users that were asking for this, so please do take a look at it. And if you have any complaints, anything that isn't working exactly like you expected, please let us know. Open a GitHub issue, and I'll get onto it as soon as I can. More new features. Let's see, more new features. So for this, I'm going to use a different project. So I'm going to use a Playwright project, so you can also see how to leverage Playwright and the TestRail CLI for your automation projects. Just bear with me while this opens VS Code. And we are going to use a different TestRail project as well, a project that doesn't have any test cases here. And okay, it opened in a different window. And here we are. This Playwright project, again, is also in the same GitHub repository as the Cypress project. You can go there, fetch the project and play around with it a little bit. And so this is the README file, but we are going to jump straight to our execution script. So once again, you have to install the CLI, you have to do npm install to install your test project for Playwright. And then you execute this command to execute the Playwright tests. And then again, you can upload the test results. I'm going to first go with the command line new features. So for command line, there are a couple things you can now do, such as, like I mentioned, you have results fields, you have milestones, you have milliseconds, among some other stuff, but I'm going to showcase those. And I'm going to paste a couple of things here, so we can quickly try it out. So this would generate a regular run with not a lot of data. So for instance, like this, like in this one, where we can see this is the code first we did for Cypress. There isn't a lot of stuff here. You can see that the time is in seconds. There are no milliseconds here. You can see there isn't like more information or anything. And let's enrich this. So we are going to add a couple of things here. One of the new features is the ability to use results fields. So for instance, I'm going to say that the version we are testing is version 2.1 of some app. So it will be added to every result. We can also add case fields when cases are being created. So I'm going to say, hey, we are using Playwright, and the automation type for Playwright is 5. So for instance, if you have different technologies you automate with, you can specify which tests are in each technology. I'm also going to add it to a milestone. I want to add it to milestone 79. So let's take a look at the project and see what that is. So it's this milestone. So to get the milestone ID, you can get it from the URL up here, and you just get the milestone ID from there. And we are going to add the test run to this milestone here. And we are going to allow milliseconds, so we have our results in milliseconds, because we think that's important for us. And let's immediately just run this and see the result, and then we'll go back here and showcase a couple more stuff. So this will start by running the Playwright tests. And here it goes. It's already running a couple of tests, just one left. And okay, that one failed, and now it's sending the results to TestRail. And okay, it's done sending the results. There was a couple of more logging here because I had the -v option here. You can use that to debug your tests if you need to. You can see like a couple of the requests that are made to TestRail, etc. But usually I wouldn't use that. It's mostly for debugging purposes. And so now let's see what happened here. So if I refresh this milestone, I can see that I now have a test under my milestone, test run under my milestone, and I can open that test run, and we'll be able to see the details we entered here. So for instance, we have the version here, so version 2.1, and we also have the elapsed time in milliseconds. So this is over 1 second, so the milliseconds might be or might not be relevant. But some tests that might run under 1 second, it might be interesting to know how many milliseconds it took. I was trying to look for one, but looks like they're all taking more than that, because these are UI tests, so they take a little longer. But if you have an API test, it will likely be under 1 second. and you'll be able to see how many milliseconds it took. So these are a couple of cool things you can do through the command line arguments. But what if we want to enrich and be more granular about our test results and say, for this test case in particular, I want to attach a screenshot, I want to add a comment, I want to do a couple of things. We could also do that. And how do we do that? Well, let me show you. So going back to our project, what we used for enriching the results data and even the cases data. Actually, let me just real quick just delete these test cases we just created. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I didn't show this. This is the automation type. It says Playwright because we added that, because we added this over here. So the custom automation type 5, it's the ID for Playwright. So it has this when the tests are created. But let's delete these tests and add some more stuff to them. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. And now we are going to see how we can enrich our tests individually. These are my tests. So I have a couple of files here. These are the tests that were run. So the smoke tests and the to-do tests. And if we open the smoke tests, we can see that there isn't much going on here. It's just, okay, so we are going to the Playwright demo app, and then we are just checking that this allows me to add to-dos to the to-do list and check the to-do list items, and also mark all as complete, should allow me to mark all items as completed. Okay, all good here. This is a regular test, a couple of helper methods down there, but no big deal. And now we want to enrich the data for these tests. So what we can do is make use of this test info object here and attach properties to the tests. So you would do something like grabbing this test info object here and go to use the annotations from Playwright. And then I believe it's push. And then you're going to push an annotation like this, which has a type and a description. So it would be something like, I believe this, which would be something, and then the description, which would be not like this. I mean, it probably worked as well, but the description, which would be something else. So by doing this, you're pushing an annotation, which in Playwright is translated for JUnit reports in properties, and those are what we use to then to grab information for the results. So I'm not going to do all this by hand. I'm just going to grab this other file I have here where I already added a couple of things, and I'm going to walk you through those things. One of the things you can do is add an after each. This is basically the teardown of each test. So after each test, it will run this code. And what does this code do? This code basically checks if the test status is not what was expected. So usually you expect it to pass. So if it didn't pass, it will generate a screenshot of the last screen you're at. And then you are using this test info annotations push method here. And you're using the TestRail attachment type, and you're attaching the screenshot. This uses the path, and then the CLI will grab that path and upload the file to the result. So we are going to see that in a bit. And then in the test cases themselves, you can do things like, for instance, adding a reference to your issue tracker. So this test case, for instance, will cover my user story TR1. I can say that the priority ID is 2. This will be a high priority. I can say that it has 2 tags, so it's custom tag 1 and 2 with ID 1 and 2. This will add 2 tags. This is one of the new features as well about the multi-select fields. This is a multi-select field, and to send more than one value, you should use this syntax here. So it's an array syntax. Straight brackets, one ID, and then a comma, and then another ID, and so on and so forth. Another thing you can do is add comments. So for instance, right here, what I'm doing is adding an annotation of type TestRail result comment, and I'm adding the test steps here. This isn't like the official test steps we use in TestRail, but it will add to the description, and you'll be able to see if when a test case fails, you'll be able to see the last step, and it's easier for you to understand where the test stopped. So yeah, And then this already has like everything like I did here, so it has a couple of annotations as well. So let's run this like this and see what happens with our results. So I'm going to rerun this now and see what happens. Okay, so run. This will generate another report. And it will once again upload the report to TestRail. Okay, so here we go. All done. It's creating the test cases again because I deleted them and created a test run. We should be good now. So let's refresh this. And okay, so now, for instance, we can see that the priority is high for this test. This was the test case I added the priority as high in. So it should be this one, I believe. Yeah, the priority ID was 2. This is a TestRail case field type of annotation here, or property. We say property when we refer to the report because it translates into this here. If I open the report, I can see this is a property here. So it's a property, it has the name case field, has the references, the priority, etc. And this is what the TestRail CLI looks at when it's parsing the report. Yeah, we have our priority, we have our automation type. Once again, we can add other stuff as well, any field the test case supports. And then if we go back to our milestone, we can see that we now have 2 test runs in the milestone. And let's check this second one. Oh, okay, it's this one. This one is the new one. The other one doesn't have any tests because I deleted all the tests. So this is a new one, and what we can see here now is that, for instance, for this failed test, we can see that it runs step 1, it runs step 2, and then it probably failed during step 2. If there was a third step, it never reached it. And we can see the failure message here. We can see there was also an associated defect, so the defect also shows here. And then there's also the screenshot that was taken after the test failed, so we can also see the screenshot. So lots of ways you can enrich your test results using these properties. Just one more detail about these properties in Playwright. You need to configure Playwright to actually enable these. So what you need to do, this is also in our sample project, so you can grab this from there. You need to add these TestRail options to the JUnit reporter. So it's basically the embed annotations as properties as true, and then the output file. Well, this is optional. I'm just customizing the output file here, and then add these TestRail options here in the reporter. The JUnit reporter must have these TestRail options here. So that it actually generates annotations, just so you know that these are not fully automatic. So you need to actually enable them. And okay, I think about these new features, very good. We're just missing the saucectl with SauceLabs integration. So let's go straight to that project. And I also created a new TestRail project here for this one. This one I'm going to show like real quick. We just open the project here. And here we go. Okay, so this is the saucectl sample project, once again, also in our repository. And what you need to be aware of here is that in the configuration, you need to enable the JUnit reporter. This is the saucectl configuration. You need to enable the JUnit reporter. You just need to do this, just very easy, just add this object, JUnit, enable true. You can also specify the file name here. And then you have your suits. This is what you would usually do for your for any project. Configure your suits here. You can get more information about how to use the saucectl on the SauceLabs website. But basically, saucectl, what it does, it's a wrapper for your test framework. So you can execute, say, Playwright, Cypress, etc. Test cases using the saucectl, and it will just execute the tests in their cloud. So okay, let's go straight to the execution. The only detail here in the execution is that you need to use this special parser on the TestRail CLI command. So the TR CLI needs this special parser, so it knows it's a saucectl report. And let's see what happens when we run it. So this is the command to run the saucectl run. I'm not going to show you how to configure it or anything. You probably can get better information about that in the SauceLabs website, but right now it's running the tests in SauceLabs. And there are four suits in progress right now. It's running in Chrome and in Firefox, so this is good for whoever has the need to run in multiple browsers or multiple devices. If you're using, for instance, if you're testing, for instance, a mobile app. So yeah, let's just hang on for a couple of seconds to see. Okay, only 2 suits in progress. Some tests failed. And okay, all good here. And now it's the CLI, the TestRail CLI that's sending the results. And okay, since we are running the same tests for Firefox and Chrome, it will create one test run for each, and we'll be seeing that right now. So there's this one and this one, and we can also go to SauceLabs and see our results in SauceLabs. So what this integration enables is for you to go from TestRail to SauceLabs. So usually you would have to go to SauceLabs and look for your test results, etc. But if you send your test result, if you centralize your test results in TestRail, you can then have links to SauceLabs if you use the saucectl. So let's see what happened in the TestRail side. So the test cases were created. I'm using a code first approach here. All good with that. And if we go to the test runs and results, we'll be able to see that these same tests were run for Firefox and for Chrome. These 2 runs were created by the TestRail CLI. Let's just look into one of them. So for instance, for Firefox, we know that this test, for instance, failed, and we want to debug this test, and we immediately have the SauceLabs session link here. We also have the browser and the platform here in which SauceLabs ran the test. All these tests. And if we want to get more information about what happened, if we want to look at the video, etc., we can click this link and it will direct us to our SauceLabs instance. And we have all the information available to debug what happened with this test. You can see the video, the screenshots, the logs, etc., everything that SauceLabs allows you to do. And yeah, I think we just reached the end of our demonstration. So yeah, let's go straight into Q&A. And okay, so Ken White is asking, do we need to have a test run for each day of the year if we run automation daily, or can we have a single test run that we just update every day? Actually, you can have just one test run. You should probably first create it, but if you see this parser unit help here, what we'll be able to see is that it has where is it? Here it is, the run ID. And so it will update the results in this run instead of creating a new run every day. So yeah, if you don't want to overload your instance with a lot of test runs, you can use this and simply have one test run. I hope that helps. Antoine Gaugier is asking, does CLI provide more API capacities than regular API? Will it be possible to get users' last active date with CLI, for instance? Well, no, the CLI uses the regular TestRail API as a backend. So no, the answer is no. It just allows you to do whatever the API you already have access to enables you to. It just abstracts a lot of logic for parsing the report, for creating test cases, mapping test cases, etc. So that's the offer, that's the value proposal for the CLI. Sorry, I'm stuttering a bit after talking for so long. Okay, so would it be possible to send the test execution time to the test case in TestRail? I would like to know which test has the longest duration. Well, we have 2 concepts. We have the concept of a case and test cases usually don't have an associated time, but we do have the time in the results, and you can probably grab all the results times for each test case and make a mean of those values. For instance, for this one, you always have the elapsed time. This is automatically sent by the CLI because this information is in the JUnit report. So you should be able to have access to this information. So Locktran is asking, I have a question about specification-first workflow. I want to map one automation test case to multiple test cases on TestRail. How should I do? Well, right now that the scenario is not supported, but after we released the 1.4, we already have at least 2 people open issues with this same request. So we are going to analyze the request, and we might eventually end up implementing it, because it seems like it's also something that a lot of people also are wanting to do. Can we use this for PHP unit framework? Well, I'm not sure. I never used PHP unit framework, but basically what you have to know is that if you can generate a JUnit report, it doesn't matter what framework you're using. You just need to know that your framework is able to generate that XML file in the JUnit format. So if PHP unit allows you to do that, then the answer is yes. If it doesn't allow you to, then unfortunately I'll have to say no. Okay, CLI 1.4 is supported by which TestRail versions? Telius Maniudakis is asking. Well, I think it should work for all TestRail versions because it uses the API. We have been making some improvements because we noticed that some older versions of TestRail didn't work with the CLI because either they required some different header or anything like that. So please do try in your instance, no matter the version. And if something goes wrong, please open a GitHub issue and we'll look into it. But at least from version 5 upwards, it should work. And the CLI can be integrated for a project with Cucumber and Detox framework. Kais Chatawi is asking. Well, we don't have support for anything too specific from Cucumber right now, or even Detox. But if Detox can generate the JUnit report, once again, it all comes down to the JUnit report. If your framework can generate a JUnit report, then yes, it can be integrated. Otherwise, unfortunately, no. We do plan on supporting more types of reports, but at this point, we only support JUnit because it's the report that most frameworks allow to generate. So Felix Tan is asking, under the spec-first approach, does that mean that we can execute and report results for tests in multiple test suites or even projects? Unfortunately, no, Felix, because the way TestRail itself is designed, it only allows you to add results to one project or one suite at a time. So unfortunately, no, you always need to have a separation in your automation projects. So if you have tests in one suite, it should be one automation project or one automation run, and then another suite or another project should be another run, or else it will not work. But thanks for asking. That's definitely a question a lot of people have as well. Can you connect Jest test results in the same way as Cypress Playwright? Well, I've seen people ask this one before. I know Jest, I don't know if Jest directly allows to have a JUnit report, but if you search for Jest JUnit reporter, you'll find there are a lot of packages that people have created to actually support exporting a JUnit report. So you should be able to use those packages as an extension to Jest and then import your test results. So yeah, most likely, yes. This was Rose Landroch asking. Which example sample projects have the new CLI TestRail integrations in them? I guess they're on GitHub. Yeah, they're on GitHub. And actually, I think I had that open somewhere here. Okay, so it's this repository. It's under Gurok. So if you look under Gurok, there are quite a few repositories for the CLI and automation in particular. There is the TestRail CLI repository, obviously. And then there is the automation frameworks integration. You can look under these. And right now we have samples for JUnit 5, TestNG, and Unit, Robot Framework, PyTest, Cypress, and also Cypress with the saucectl. So these are what we have right now. This is something that is always under constant evolution, so keep an eye out for new stuff that we might add to it. I hope you can get your automation projects up and running and everything into TestRail with ease. If not, let us know and we'll try to improve our CLI as well. Thanks everyone for being here, and see you next time.